Hello, everybody. Welcome to an extra special episode of the Power Hour. I'm calling it that because it's midday, but we have Noah and Carlos with us today, so that's why it's an extra special episode. Thank you to Ross, who already got the show started with a 12 or 10 euro super chat. Thank you very much. He says he's going to have something intelligent to listen to. Well, I hope so, Ross. Today, we're going to talk about some things that are a little bit out of the ordinary for us. We're going to be reacting to some modern day streamers. So I can't promise you that the entire show will be intelligent, but we will make it as intelligent as possible while reacting to folks like Andrew Tate, Aiden Ross, and Adam22. We'll also cover some more, I don't know, intelligent topics, for lack of a better word, some more serious topics. But I think some of these videos that I have today will be worth deconstructing, and I'm excited to see what Carlos and Noah have to say about them. So without further ado, we'll play the intro and then get right into it. All right. Well, first things first, I want to ask you, Noah, do you have any good, knock-knock jokes right off the bat?
Why do I have to be the one that has knock-knock
Because
jokes?
you've got the best dad jokes, right? I just need, a quick, short dad joke to start the stream.
I don't think I do. But when my son was about 4 years old, he didn't really get knock-knock jokes yet. And he would just make them up, right? And this is one he told all the time. He would say, knock, knock.
Who's there?
Pancake.
Pancake who?
Gorilla. He thought it was hilarious at the time.
I like it. Did my laugh track work? You guys, I was trying to play the laugh track there.
That's probably appropriate.
I just really wanted to try out my new soundboard, and honestly, that was perfect. So
I'm sure I'll have plenty of dad jokes along the way.
I'll just have to be ready to hit you with the
right.
laugh.
I'm actually really excited about this one. When you talked about looking at these people like these Sneeko and all these types, I took a quick look, and I'm absolutely disgusted that people go to these types of weak, just wrong people as if there's some sort of thing to emulate, right? When they're not. They are the epitome of what we should be combating, right? In that sort of thing, because there is a way to conduct yourself that is, upright and moral without having to go down these weird, edgy, silly things that are just so performative and so corny, for lack of a better word. Before we get started, though, I just want to remind everyone to like the stream. We get you think those guys get views? It's because they're algorithmically designed to get views. We get suppressed. So please like that stream, subscribe, all that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I agree. I was just watching this stuff for whatever reason, for entertainment. There's actually there's a YouTube creator that I like who kind of looks at all these streamers and almost analyzes it from the perspective of like, this is our culture decaying, like this is society decaying, the fact that these are our influencers nowadays. And as I was watching more of his videos and kind of diving into the world of these internet streamers, it almost made me start to understand Andrew Tate and why Andrew Tate's popular. Because he's a dum-dum. He admits to not reading books. He doesn't practice what he preaches in many ways. He's obviously blatantly misogynistic, and talks about escaping the matrix without critiquing capitalism. But at least he's like telling kids to make something of themselves. It's kind of like the Jordan Peterson effect, right? These kids are just surrounded with this nonsense, the Sneakos of the world, the Aiden Rosses of the world, who are just playing Minecraft or playing Fortnite and, just ADD brain all over the place, sharing nothing valuable, nothing, of substance on their streams. And then Andrew Tate comes along and says, you should work out and you should be a man that people can respect, and you should not give in to your most base urges all the time. And, have self-discipline. And it makes sense that in comparison to Sneeko and Aiden Ross, that sounds like a good message. That sounds like a valuable message. So as, and we've stayed away from culture war stuff for the most part, but, as I was watching this, I'm like, I feel like it's important for us to comment on this, to offer kids something else, other than Andrew Tate, a real movement against the matrix, so to speak, which is communism, and, offered by three people who, would agree that you should have discipline and you should, be someone that people can rely on and people that someone should respect, offer kids that message from an outlet other than Andrew Tate. But, obviously we won't fall into the normal culture war back and forth that you see in the media every day, but I do want to comment on it a little bit from our own perspective and from an anti-capitalist perspective.
And it's so important because we have to understand the people, and part of understanding the people in order to lead with them and through them is understanding why sections of them fall for these different things, why sections of them fall for the Aiden Ross. I haven't seen those three. I've seen the Tate. Why sections of them fall for that, why sections of them fall for Tate, and why they fall for different things. And part of this is not just like the sort of shallow rejection of like they're just fully wrong and fully manipulated. It's understanding what part of that discourse was rational enough for them to connect to it, at least at some level. And how can we take that perhaps very small seed of rationality and disconnect it from the view that it is currently in and reconnect it in something that's closer to truth and that's better and healthier for human beings. And that requires, engaging with these very cringe videos, and people who you sit back and you're like, how does this person have, hundreds of thousands or millions of subscribers or something? They literally provide nothing of value. It's just condemning this and condemning the people who watch it is never enough, and you accomplish nothing by doing that. You have to understand what has driven people to this, what are the objective conditions that have driven them there, what are the subjective conditions which have driven them there, and only then can you begin a battle that can actually substantially beat those people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And not to always bring it back to Marxism, but that's what helps us understand these things, right? This is a reflection of the deterioration of our society right now, right? Of this era of reproletarianization, as things get worse and worse, this alienation people feel is like it's visceral, right? And so when there's this complete lack of anything good coming from the working class forces that were supposed to be there, of course people go and all they see instead is culture war stuff and things they don't relate to. Of course they glom on to someone like Andrew Tate, who says be respectable, be someone people can depend on. That role needs to be filled by communists because we are the people that you can actually depend on. We're not saying that while trafficking women for, you know what I mean? Like actually fulfilling that ideal that they simply talk about. I mean, look at Jordan Peterson's life. He's not what he tells people to do, right? You can even, when he's live streaming, I think it's funny because his room behind him is often not clean. And his whole thing is clean your room. You see that? That's a clean fucking room. Sorry, but yeah, it's like walking the walk as well as talking the talk is massively important because people do need that sort of influence, right? Especially young people. They need to see adults conducting themselves in a way that doesn't say respect me, please respect me, everybody else is horrible, that quietly demands respect. And I think there's a big difference between those things.
Absolutely. I think we should just jump into the videos here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But we can watch it through this guy who analyzes stuff like this. He put together sort of a compilation of the clips. But basically, Andrew Tate's on house arrest right now for the trafficking charges. So every once in a while, he hits up this major streamer, Tate-Ross, and does these emergency meetings, he calls them. And it's basically just where Andrew Tate can talk to the world. But here they had Aiden on, obviously, and then they had this guy, Adam22, as well, who's a podcast host that recently allowed his wife to make an adult film with another man, the mother of his kids, had her make an adult film with another man for money. And then he's gotten a lot of backlash for that on the internet, and his only response is, I just view it as a business transaction. I view my wife sleeping with another man as a business transaction. So literally, he's like commodified his wife. And Tate-Ross and Tate invite that guy on the stream to have a conversation with him. So obviously, there's a lot of commentary there for us to make as well. And Wayne says Tate-Ross can't even read. I'm not kidding. He doesn't know how to read. You guys might think that's a joke if you don't know who Tate-Ross is. Once you see this kid, it's really, really honestly sad that this is the kind of kid who's influencing society, and he's addicted to sipping lean as well. But yeah, I told you guys we're going through the shits today, so prepare yourselves. Here, I gotta share my screen. So this is from a YouTube channel called Too Lazy to Try. This is the guy who covers this basically from the perspective of like, this is an example of our society decaying, and he uses this picture of George Costanza. It's pretty funny. But
he recently just did one of his emergency meetings over on Rumble, and he had on Tate-Ross. So of course, most of the stream was Aiden saying a bunch of gay stuff and acting like an idiot. And then things got even worse when they brought on Adam22, and he asked Andrew if he'd do a DP with him and his wife. And then Aiden started asking a bunch of questions about their whole situation. And then at that point, Andrew's just like, all right, I can't take this anymore. We need to change the conversation. So this stream was a mess. You could tell halfway through it, Andrew was thinking, what am I doing with my life? Like, this is not the best representation of what it's like to escape the matrix. If this is what it looks like, if this is what you spend your time doing, I don't think anybody's looking to escape. I think everybody's just fine. I don't think anybody wants
to pause it real quick.
Rest listening to.
So I think the term escape the matrix, which is Andrew Tate's thing, right, is interesting because it's very literally, and the writers have said this, a metaphor for class consciousness, right? So to genuinely escape the matrix, we need to understand what society really is and what class really is in our position in that. It almost feels like Andrew Tate, if he read Marx, might get there and get over all the other stuff that gets in his way. You know what I mean?
Maybe, but he's also in a petty bourgeois or lumpen class position, where he's making all this money off OnlyFans, and really he's just, he's totally bought into the individualist mindset too. But that's what's so paradoxical about him saying escape the matrix. Is he's part of the matrix. The matrix is capitalism, and the ruling class of capitalism is the capitalists. And really what he's telling everyone to do is just outcompete others and become a capitalist, so you can live this life of full of consumerism and just insane wealth. And he ends up calling out Adam 22 and Aiden Ross, the other people here. But as a lot of people in the comments are pointing out, this is basically just Andrew Tate being forced to talk to the people who watch Andrew Tate. This is the kind of audience he's cultivated.
It's like a meta matrix, right? Like he thinks he's getting out of the matrix, but he's just going into a secondary matrix, which I believe was a matrix plot point.
Yeah, but the part of it also is that the form of bourgeois ideology that each disseminate belong to different eras. Andrew Tate is upholding an older form of bourgeois respectability mixed with, a form of preaching of masculinity that's got some sexism and some patriarchy mixed in. And then the modern form of bourgeois ideology, specifically the liberal wing of bourgeois ideology, is just rooted in sexual libertinism and just you could do anything you want, and anything that even smells like rules or norms or imperatives are to be broken. And emancipation and freedom is reduced to just the constant breaking of any of those limitations. And it is a very crude and abstract and empty form of freedom that if you look at any of the greatest minds in the history of philosophy, all of them, whether it's Spinoza, Hegel, the classical Marxist authors, even someone like John Locke, they all are able to demarcate the difference between libertinism, so just no rules, you can do anything you want, and actual freedom. And the understanding has always been that actual freedom can only be something that is realized through certain norms and through certain laws and through determination. This idea that you have on one side determination and the necessary and laws, and then on the other side you have freedom and will is a false dichotomy. In reality, in order to have freedom, you can only have freedom through certain forms of regulation. And there go the chihuahuas.
Well, and understanding what the necessities are, right? When he says that freedom is nothing other than insight into necessity, that's what he's talking about. Is precisely what Carlos just said, added with overcoming the particulars of life, eating, shelter, water, etc. Getting those done, then you can begin to think of freedom.
Right. We got a super chat here from Apolitical Idealist. Thank you so much. I see a lot of online middle-class communists use capitalism as an excuse to be lazy and cry about their lives. Isn't personal development better? So this is part of what I'm saying. This is why I feel like an alternative to a guy like Andrew Tate, a communist alternative to a guy like him, is so important, right? Because we believe in personal development. We believe in collective development too, and that, personal development is in turn collective development, because we're all individuals that are part of a collective, and our individual being is, influenced by the collective too. But we believe in personal development. We believe that you should walk the walk, as Noah says in an excellent article that he wrote about how communists should conduct themselves day to day. Right. So that's why I'm saying an alternative is so important to this guy, Andrew Tate, especially for young men. Right, because young men right now have influences like Sneeko. They have influences like Aiden Ross. So Andrew Tate offering them any kind of message of personal development seems more appealing. Or, eventually they start to realize that this life of debauchery and consumerism, doesn't lead to real happiness. And they look to somebody like Andrew Tate who tells them to develop themselves, right? But Andrew Tate then also says all these idiotic things. He admits that he doesn't read. He doesn't truly understand the system that he's in, or doesn't truly understand the matrix. So we offer a real counter hegemony. We're really saying, let's destroy the matrix. Let's work collectively to destroy the system that we're in and create one that optimizes human flourishing. And to do that, you're going to have to be an upstanding human being, right? You're going to have to undergo personal development. And we understand that everybody's flawed and everybody's human, but we should always strive to be better, right? So that's a message that I feel like young kids need to hear from somebody other than Andrew freaking Tate. So I actually couldn't agree more with this sentiment, a political idealist. And, obviously I'm from the wrestling community where personal development, individual development, and collective development of the team is a big deal and a heavy emphasis. And, it's something I still believe in for sure. But again, it's like this Jordan Peterson idea of you need to clean your room so you can win, go out and succeed in society. And you're not allowed to critique the society around you at all. That's stupid. A true warrior is someone who develops themselves personally, engages in these whatever acts to develop themselves, exercise, reading, treating other people with respect, stuff like that. And criticizes society and criticizes injustice and leads the collective against those acts of injustice. So, yeah.
And just real quick, like, a lot of this is premised again on philosophical assumptions that divide things that in the real world are not that divided, such as the individual from society. It's like you either change society or you change the individual, and then the order of which that should be done ends up demarcating like the one from the other. For Peterson, first you have to change yourself and clean your room before you could do, and that's absurd. Like, these processes are dialectical, and every genuine ethical transformation is almost always at the same time, and this is an insight that comes from Gramsci and Jay. It's almost always an ethical political transformation, because you're not transforming yourself in a void. You're transforming yourself in a specific environment that transformation that you undergo influences the environment in the same way that environment influenced your transformation. And if you're a part of a revolutionary process, it's not just like the objective process going on outside of you that's changing, it's you as well. And your change is also influencing that process. And, being able to have those mutual levels and interconnected, interdependent, interpenetrative levels of transformation is fundamental for any revolutionary process. You have to create, in the process of fighting for a new society, the new human beings that are going to be embodied as like the people of this specific society.
And even where we are right now, these things are seen as good qualities within an individual, right? The people who defend those who cannot defend themselves, the people who take care of their family and their neighborhood, who walk when a old woman is struggling to cross the street, who help her across the street, right? Who see that's the same older woman struggling to put groceries in her car, go up and ask if she needs help and put the groceries in her car. That's who's looked up to. And what we say is that this is who we build ourselves into. It's not just about educating yourself. It's not just about lifting weights and building your body up, right? It is also building up who you are as a person. Be that person that can be depended on, right? That actually can be depended on, though. And that establishes the realm where all of us together create something towards freedom, can create that fight towards freedom, right? It's not one then the other, but then these go on at the exact same time and share a relationship between the two. As we fight politically, as we engage in the class struggle, we are doing this same thing. It is actually a form of engaging in that, right?
Aiden Ross.
I just want to say, I'm gonna do about this. Like a year ago was our anniversary when we first met. Look at the YouTube video. A year ago is our anniversary. It's been a year since we've literally been with each other. Well, we've been talking.
So that was your joke? The whole joke is that you were going to try and pretend we were a couple and do some gay.
I was just trying to, bro. Okay, but real shit. It was a year ago. Doesn't time pass on, bro? It's already been a year.
So there's not much to glean from this, other than you can, if you don't know who Aiden Ross is, you can observe him and just be like, okay, this is who kids are watching. Okay.
How crazy is that?
Yes, time continues. It marches forward. That is correct.
Yeah.
How about you a streamer?
Eddie,
This is your
what are these people at in terms of what are these people at in terms of like views?
Good
Because I know that Tate was huge. There was like a month where I literally did not stop seeing Tate videos. I had no idea who he was. I never liked any of the things in that thing, but everyone on social media, he was to be found. But these other kids, what's their like following like?
I believe Aiden Ross was banned from Twitch. So he's doing like the kick thing, but he currently has 2.3 million followers on Twitter. Yeah. That's also why we need to talk about this stuff, because this is where eyeballs are. You know, and that's one thing I was thinking to myself as I was watching it. I'm like, normally this stuff is so stupid, you know, I don't even entertain it. But there's so many kids watching this, and there's so many kids who are susceptible to, you know, even an anti-establishment message who are watching this. And, you know, we can do all the educational videos and anti-imperialist videos we want, and that'll still be our focus. But like, someone's got to reach these kids. Someone's got to reach these 2.3 million people who are listening to Aiden Ross's thoughts, you know, and rather than anything with even a hint of intelligence. Like somebody said he doesn't know how to read. I mean, that's sad, but I believe it, you know, on his stream every day. I mean, and Andrew Tate's going to get into it here, so I won't spoil it. Actually, I'll stop talking now, but do you have anything to add, Noah? Sorry.
I had something just real quick that I need. Part of the importance of commenting on it also is because of the insular character of how algorithms work. And the only way that you could start reaching people that are in that space is by commenting on it. And that's unfortunate, but it means that at least in some moments we have to come down and see what the hell are, you know, perhaps the most susceptible parts of the parts of the masses that are more susceptible to the highest forms of stupidity. What are they watching, and how can we orient them out of that? Because it's true. I mean, we could do as good a job as we want in the field that we want, but the people that'll find us are the people that are already in either in that space or in adjacent spaces. And in order to get to like the millions of people who are also suffering in their everyday life because they live under a system that just creates general immiseration for everyone, in order to get to them, we kind of have to do stuff like this.
Yeah, that someone asked us about recruitment the other day. What do we mean when we say recruitment? This is kind of what we mean. Sorry.
Let me just say that this is on YouTube, right, and Twitch. We have to remember that this is precisely we should Drake, get a hold of us. We're fine with that.
Yeah, except we have no new friends, so we can't.
But remember that what is like boosted in those algorithms is precisely what they want people's focus on, right? So we need ways to bust around. This isn't TikTok before Oracle took over, when it was genuinely people-oriented algorithms, right? Where if people were spreading it around and watching it, it was able to blow up. This is YouTube and Twitch that get purposefully suppressed and purposefully boosted based on what the content is. So we have to remember that. And one of the reasons we can comment on stuff like that is to reach people through that algorithm. This, what we're doing right now, pushes us into that whole section, right? And it's true that, I mean, look at these clowns. Look at them. Come on. You know, just.
Absolutely. No, you're good. I gave you a ding for a good point, because part of the reason too there's been all the hysteria about TikTok is these other social media platforms can't keep up with the TikTok algorithm. It was too good. Like it was boosting people who weren't famous. You know, it was like completely based on merit. There were like no traditional intellectual property laws. So you could use other people's songs, other people's videos. It was all based on collaboration. And, you know, a lot of that has changed since the app, the US servers were taken over by Oracle and the NATO ops and national security agents. But yeah, the algorithm is so much better than the algorithm that pumps out this kind of crap. I mean, this video itself is kind of good, but this crap, Aiden Ross crap, who has 4 million subs on YouTube, by the way, I guess. And give Carlos an aneurysm before the stream is over.
Oh
These
my
are the
God.
thoughts in your brain. Isn't it crazy that a year has passed since a year ago? Let's all talk about that. Like, well, who listens to you? What do you say that's insightful or interesting ever?
Bro.
That's what you come up with? And then you thought, you know what? Instead of me just saying that, let me first try and say it in a homosexual way. And then after I say it in a homosexual way, let me just talk about how it's been a year since a year ago.
Yeah, so this is what the top G is up to now. Like pretty much the whole podcast is just Aiden acting gay and saying something stupid. And then Andrew's just like, what am I doing here? Why am I wasting my time with this kid? Because also I think he's already tried to help him like a year ago when they met. Andrew was trying to mentor him and get him in the gym and get him off drugs. Like I think Andrew actually wanted to help him, but Aiden was more focused on sniffing Andrew's chair.
You know this.
I have work to do. I'm done. I fixed you.
I'm ready, bro. I'm really gonna do this shit. Y'all don't understand, bro. I'm really gonna do this shit, bro. Like, I think it's time, bro. It's time. I needed this. I needed to come here for a reason. I was thinking to myself, I was like, why am I in a hotel room all day, every day? I'm really like not playing around this time. I'm 22. You know what I mean? And it took me a while to understand that. And you know, it did. And I just want to say, bro, I think I'm ready, bro.
Yeah, so then after that,
Okay, by the way, that was just absurd to watch. But this kid, too, like Andrew Tate has tried to get him to stop drinking lean, stop doing drugs, and, you know, like make something of himself. Just stop being a turd, right? But it hasn't worked. It basically turned Aiden Ross into this. And, you know, I do see that as it shows the failure or what's wrong about the just pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. You know, the idea that you on your own with your own sheer determination and will, you know, I believe in the power of willpower and determination, but the idea that you can, you know, get yourself on drugs and make yourself an upstanding person, just it's all based on you. You know, you got to do it. You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like what really helps drug addicts is being in a facility surrounded by people who can help them. You know, what helps an individual flourish is being in an environment that's designed to help them flourish, being around other people who can support them and look out for them and criticize them when they mess up, but in a way that's not screw you. But, you know, I want to point this out what you're doing wrong so I can help you improve. Right. It just goes back to everything Carlos was saying. You know, the collective, the society affects the individual and the development of the individual. Right. And this is the development of an individual under capitalism where we're isolated from each other and just told to chase money.
Look, trying to white knuckle change everything about yourself on your own is absolutely impossible. By the way, what's up, David? Thank you so much. It's and you know, I'm not shy about my past, right? I was addicted to heroin for years, and I'm 16 years clean now, and I wouldn't have done that if I had tried to do it all on my own. And it took a lot of me, a lot of my own strength and building strength I didn't have before that. But if I hadn't removed myself from the situation I had been in and put myself in a situation where I was...
I'm so sorry, Noah. Please keep going.
No, I had like no break moment. Carlos removed himself from the stream because he couldn't stop.
Carlos couldn't stop laughing.
That's what got me. It was like Jimmy Fallon making everyone else laugh, you know, when he... I can't talk seriously with like this dude looking at me like that.
That's what Ill State Fishing said. Can we please play the video? Did you want to finish up what you were saying, Noah? It was a great point.
I don't.
All right, we'll just move on. Hopefully Carlos returns.
If you want to get off drugs, be around other people who are off drugs.
Yes.
That's all. Be
Sober
around
is
your
cool.
family. You earn their respect back.
Yes. Sober, cool.
Shaved his head. He talked about how Andrew changed his life. He said he's all motivated, but then he just went back to sipping lean and playing video games all day. And
What
he's
is
doing all
lean?
this.
What the hell is lean? Is this something I don't know about?
You don't know about lean? It's actually really popular now. It's like cough syrup and codeine. It's promoted by a lot of Southern rappers. Lil Wayne.
It used to be called SERP or scissor or
yeah, it's that.
Yeah, okay.
That's
Is it
actually what
called weed
Jamarcus
now?
Russell got addicted to. Kind of killed his football career.
Jail. And also, I guess he never wrote Andrew any letters while he's there. So Andrew's pissed about that as well. And he keeps saying he's given up on him, but Aiden's still trying to convince him that he's going to get it together eventually.
I'm starting to wake up at a reasonable hour now. Brother, I'm making changes in my life for the better. And watch by the end of 2020, 2023, when you actually see me the way you were supposed to see me, you're gonna be like, wow. And you know what? You'll be happy. You'll really understand, like, drugs, there's a big problem in the world, and I'm gonna get over it. And I'm out, I'm clean.
I've heard all this shit from you before, Aiden. I'm no longer emotionally invested. I don't give a fuck if you end up homeless on the street, a fentanyl addict, injecting yourself with whatever poison you decide you need on that day. Completely uninterested. Don't even text me. I don't care. I've tried long enough with you, and for some reason you keep getting dragged back down to degeneracy. So I'm no longer emotionally interested in your life path. I don't give a shit whether you become the most famous man in the world, which of course won't happen because that is me, or a drug-riddled piece of shit somewhere on the street in LA still talking about the time you used to have a streaming career.
And that's kind of what I mean by this being an example of the capitalist ruthlessness. Like, you either pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you quit drugs, or you end up being, drug-addled on the street, like Tate was saying. But we only look at things like drug addiction through an individualistic lens. We never ask ourselves, how can we change society to make it so many people don't feel like drugs are the only alternative, or so drugs aren't promoted, or so drugs aren't so heavily trafficked.
And it's such a bourgeois and idealist way of understanding addiction, which reduces it just to like individual choices, and doesn't see like not only the environment that promotes it, but the fact that addiction is rooted in practices and the everyday life of people, and that it can only be overcome by changing what was an addiction for a healthy practice, and just creating healthy habits. And there's nothing new about this. Like, the whole basis of the most popular ethical doctrine of the ancient world, Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, like, it's called a virtue ethics because it's grounded on the idea that we can have all the ethical maxims we want, but at the end of the day, ethical virtue is grounded not on just knowing, but on doing, on habits, and building healthy practices that lead to human flourishing and develop virtue within the various parts of the individual. And it's and anyone that, and I've talked to Noah about this, and I have friends that have gone through it, like, it's so rooted in changing your habits and in changing your practices and your way of being in the world. And it's not just like, I'm going to make this decision, and in my head, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to stop. It's about practices. And, it takes also sometimes, a changing of the environment that you're in, because it's that environment that led you usually, or that conditioned you into doing that. And if that environment is still there and it's ever present, when one of the things that, like, Joey Diaz, which I'm sure that I know Eddie knows that. I'm not sure if no one knows him, but he's a hilarious comedian. But he was someone who was deeply riddled in, like, crime and drug use, just that form of lifestyle that he grew up in. And it's something that he doesn't mention it, but it's implied. Like, he meets his wife, he is kind of embarrassed by the fact that she's like a super sweet woman, and then he's got all this shit going on. And as he gets closer to her and changes his environment, it almost naturally goes away. And he gets to a point where he's like, I gotta stop this shit. And I don't think he's reflected on it to the point of saying that change in my environment really was central to the change in me as an individual. But what you see it implied, which is that he's got a new set of people that he's around, and that affects his behavioral patterns and adjusts him to this new environment so that he can adapt better in this new environment.
Yeah, that is so absolutely essential. And this is what I tell anyone coming to me for advice on how to get over drugs. They're just, a month clean, a week or whatever. Find a passion, something that can fill the void that your entire life being focused on drugs and getting money for drugs and everything else associated with. Something that can take that place, right? Because it leaves you just stewing. And if you're in that same environment, thinking about the same things, you can't. And if it's a passion that takes you out of the real world for a minute, much better. You're in that other world. You're writing a novel. You're, working on a screen, whatever it is, doing painting, anything you can pour yourself into, right? Learning fucking Marxism. Sorry to swear. But learning Marxism puts you into those pages for hours and hours and hours at a time, and you're building something new out of it. I also want to say real quick on this right here is Andrew Tate being weak, being so weak. He just gives up on this kid the minute it gets hard, right? If he'd actually cared about helping this kid get off drugs, he'd have educated himself on what that's like. And you can kind of tell he's never had to actually do anything hard in his life, that he's just strolled through. Because you find those things out when you're genuinely engaged. He was never engaged in this guy. It was probably all a publicity thing, If he were actually interested in helping this kid, he would, not be doing this on a podcast. He'd be talking to him man to man and saying, we got to figure this out.
Right. It's obvious he's using the kid for his platform. The kid has millions of subscribers. Tate's locked on house arrest. He likes to be able to jump on here, and he says he tries to help the guy. But, who gives up on a drug addict after one relapse, especially when they're this young? That's pretty... anyone who knows drug addicts knows that relapses are pretty friggin' common. So just to give up on him after that and say you don't care if he ends up drug-addled in the street, okay, well, you don't care about him then. You never did.
If the people who helped me would have given up after one relapse, I'd still be out there using, and where would I be? Where would my family be? I would never have built myself into what I am now,
For sure.
So then Jake Paul joined at one point and things got even weirder. I think because Aiden was kind of jealous since Andrew is definitely more impressed by Jake, with his work ethic and his boxing career and everything. And he was giving him a lot of compliments. He was saying Jake is the best YouTube boxer and he would even struggle in a fight against him. And they're talking about sparring together and working out together and everything. So I think he was getting kind of jealous and he wanted to impress Andrew by proving he was a positive influence on him and he's heading in the right direction. And now he has some discipline and self-control. But of course, this just results in him saying some weird shit.
When you getting in there, Aiden?
Actually, soon. Okay.
He's got to fight his battle against lean first.
Bro, what is going on with this lean shit? Yes, bro, I'm clean.
I am allowed.
Andrew, you actually helped me stop masturbating because every time that I would masturbate, I would think of you. And I'd be like, nah, this is not right. I'm going to stop.
What the fuck?
I said, I'm going to stop doing this shit now. No, for real. You put it in my brain. Nah, I haven't done it in months. Swear to God.
Yeah, so this kid is something else. I don't know how he manages to do it, but everything he says turns into something gay. Or it's just the stupidest thing you've ever heard. Earlier in the podcast, Andrew was trying to ask him what he'd be doing if he wasn't a streamer. How would he make money? And he's like, oh, I would figure it out. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. I would think of something outside the box. And goes on to talk about Bitcoin, real estate, and investing.
If you weren't a streamer, how would you try and become successful and rich?
I would find ways to make money out of thinking outside the box. Something that nobody's doing. Something that.
By the way, we're about to get into the more interesting part of the interview, the part that I really wanted to react to. But I just want to say, today I went on the App Store, the Apple App Store, and I found that there's a game called Streamer Life Simulator, where you can just play the life of a streamer and pretend you're actually a streamer. So people are literally simulating the life of Aiden Ross, pretending to be Aiden Ross. Like, dude, just get on your computer and do a real stream. If you want to be a streamer, why are you playing the Streamer Life Simulator? It takes almost nothing to do this. Everybody has a computer. But yeah, the decay of our culture
is very, unique. Real estate.
And I just want to say real quick that because there's a few people that talk about the decay of culture. Not many connect it to what's really going on, the foundation of why that culture is decaying, which is that we're seeing the decay of empire, of capitalist imperialism. And I'm reading right now a very good book by Gabor Mate, The Myth of Normal. And it's very good. It's talking about, how the things that we have culturally considered to be normal are really not only abnormal from the standpoint of human history, but also extremely unhealthy. And we've created a culture that has normalized trauma, both big T and small t trauma, and that reflects itself in various behavioral patterns and even chronic diseases, which we have, usually attributed simply to genetics or to, bad luck of the draw, that they're rooted in these practices and rooted in trying. It's a wonderful analysis of how fucked up our culture is. But what's missing all throughout it is the fact that culture is a reflection of a system, of an economic system that prioritizes profit over people, and that its only bottom line is profit. And that it's gotten to a point where it's lost its historical rationality. To use Hegel's phrase, like, it no longer deserves to be actual. It's crumbling right before our eyes. And a new world is coming out. And in the process of that crumbling, you get this culture. You get the Aiden Rosses, you get the Tates, you get the extreme forms of libertinism, and you get this degeneration of culture. And I don't mean that in some ways where people use it to in a more derogatory sense, but it's a culture in decay because it's an economic system in decay. And what you have to do in the face of that is not only build up the forces that are going to present us with a new world, a new mode of production, but simultaneously build up the forces which are going to be the kernel for a new culture. And that's, what we're trying to do here. The central problem, I think, of which is like the control, the economic, the control of things is still in the hands of the people that benefit from this cultural degeneration. This content is boosted, ours is suppressed.
Yeah, just like that.
which is the worst part about our TikTok being banned, by the way, especially because those TikToks specifically speak a lot to young men, kids who are susceptible to the Andrew Tate message. You think his message is the real counter hegemony, the real answer to the Aiden Rosses and the cultural degeneration, which of course it's not.
You just said, I'm going to think outside the box and do something that nobody else is doing, and named crypto and real estate as those out-of-the-box ideas that nobody else has ever thought of or tried. Perhaps the most in-the-box ideas that everyone on Earth is already trying to do. We can make a big documentary.
That reminds me, I just saw this clip the other day, dude, and it was the guy that is from, I think, Good Girls, the show, the New Girl.
I loved that show. Me and Rachel watched.
Nick is the. I don't remember what the actual guy's name is. I remember the character's name, but he's in another show, and he's telling this guy about this brilliant idea that he has about a girl who falls in love with vampires, and there ends up being a love triangle with a wolf and he's going on, and it's very clearly Twilight. It's like, yeah, dude, that's Twilight. It's been done. And
Are
it's the
you
same
sure
thing.
that
I'm gonna
wasn't
think
in
outside the
New
box.
Girl? I'm pretty sure that was in New Girl.
That was a New Girl. I don't know. I
By the
saw
way,
the clip.
underratedly funny show. Like
Oh, it's hilarious.
they advertised it as if it was only for women and blah blah blah. Hilarious show. One of the funniest shows ever. Winnie the Bish. Oh man, one of the best characters.
But it's the same thing here. It's like, oh, I'm gonna think outside the box, and then real estate, crypto, and literally all the same shit that everyone is doing. And that gets at a few paradoxes that are like in the system and in the culture and in the in the way that individuals construct themselves in the process of identity formation. And although we're working, we've been working for the last 3 decades within the realms of prophilicity, of who you are as your profile. And the development of your identity is synonymous to the development, the curation of your profile. And here the work of Hans-Georg Müller and Paul D'Ambrosio is fantastic. I've taught it for some years, but it takes different forms in different areas. In China, it's, as they argue, it takes the form of sincerity, of sincere role enactment, but done through prophilicity. And in the West, it takes the form of continuing the paradox of authenticity, where like we think we're being authentic when we try to be these authentic things. But in reality, when the whole culture is telling you, construct yourself, be authentic, find your real self, when you do that, you're just doing what everyone else is doing. And there couldn't be anything more inauthentic than that striving to be authentic within the bounds of bourgeois culture and bourgeois morality. And that's just like another example of that. I'm going to be authentic, think outside the box. And then what does he say? Literally what everyone else who also says, I'm going to be authentic and think outside the box says.
Well, it's not for no reason that it's the sort of libertarians that are super into crypto, right? That whole brand is wrapped around being a free thinker who just coincidentally, I guess, thinks exactly the same exact things as every other free thinker, right? They all say the same things. They all like the same things, etc. It's like Carlos just said, it's the exact opposite. It's
Documentary how you did what top G needed you to do in Santiago, Chile.
Dude, I don't know where that is. First of all, what hold on, what continent even is that? Where does that even exist on the globe? You want me to go to another
Did he just say consonant?
Named Chile and meet somebody, and I'm probably gonna not make it even back alive.
Yes.
Are you saying consonant on purpose?
What?
Okay, so you fail on that test. Next.
Yeah, so after like an hour and a half of Aiden saying stupid shit and acting gay, they invite on Adam 22, and right when he joins, he's
All right, here's where it gets wild. Here's what I really want you guys to see, because we can make the most commentary about this Adam 22 guy, who recently had his wife make an adult film with an adult film star, and then has just responded to all the backlash with, I did it for the money, bro. I look at it like a business transaction. It was a professional transaction shot by professionals. And you see how this relationship, this monogamous relationship that's supposed to be based on love, where this is literally the mother of his children. He's prioritizing money over all of that, even over the children themselves, because they're going to get, kids are going to bring this up at school and use it to taunt them. But when people have presented him with this information, all he responds with is, I just look at it like a business transaction. Money. Go watch the video. Money, money, money. And only under a capitalist mode of production does that even make sense, right? Like you care more about collecting green paper, ultimately, then you care about your wife, the person who you have this relationship with and who you're raising a family with. And obviously money under capitalism has this power as the universal equivalent that can be exchanged for any and all, other commodities in a system where everything's commodified. But that's exactly the problem. He's created this like laser focus, or it's created this laser focus on money in him, where he'll prioritize money over his family and over his relationships. And that's what capitalism does.
He starts asking Andrew if he'll do a DP with him and his wife. And eventually Andrew just has to stop the conversation and be like, all right, I can't take this anymore. What are we doing here? Are we really talking about this right now? And I saw a lot of people tweeting about this clip because he actually makes a lot of good points here. You know, even people that usually disagree with him are like, I got to give it to him. He's right on the money with this.
He's the top G. I want to be the bottom G. So I do want to extend an invite that if you were ever interested in doing your first ever doubletration scene, that me and Lena, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like, would he be a suitable candidate? Can I tap him in?
I don't know. No.
Look at him literally trying to pimp out his wife.
And she's like, immediately, no. I wonder if he had to talk her into the original one. It just makes the whole thing more gross to me, you know? And what Eddie said just now, that much more poignant, that we're at a point where society built this guy, right? He didn't just arrive out of nowhere. And we're at this point where, like, he's doing this. His wife, he's literally, like, pushing her at another man to say, like, let's make some money out of this.
And this is just like old school pimping,
right,
in the form of post-technological revolution decaying capitalist imperialism. Like, it's just old school pimping with the modern methods of the internet.
OnlyFans may as well be wearing one of those big old hats from the 70s, right? And talking about cutting people, you know? There's a reason.
Where's the baby powder? Get the baby powder out.
Making sure they weren't running their blocks.
What?
Fair enough. Go ahead, Andrew. Andrew, would you double penetrate her, bro? Would you do that? Andrew, go ahead. Finish the answer.
There's absolutely 0% chance of that happening.
Well, not last thing, but I think I asked this, but wait, so Lennon, which sex was better? Because you haven't had it. Jason was the first thing you had.
You know what?
Right?
Let me say something. I find this very uncomfortable to talk about. There's not many things I find uncomfortable, but I just find this uncomfortable to talk about. And the reason is not because, I mean, I'm an adult. I know what sex is. Of course, I've lived a very varied life. I just feel like, I don't know. We have so many people watching us, and we're just talking about dick and vagina. Don't you think this is...
Can you pause real quick, Eddie?
I don't know. We're all pretty intelligent people. We talk about the Matrix and how they're trying to dumb us all down and trying to control all of our minds. And this base instinct talk, I find it very uncomfortable. I'm not comfortable being on this stream. If I was sitting with a...
Isn't this guy a sex trafficker?
Yeah. And it's hypocritical. You know, but he's almost having like a based moment here. He's basically saying, what the hell is this? But he doesn't, necessarily have the words to explain it. And if he did, he would end up criticizing himself for like the OnlyFans stuff and the cam girl websites that he runs and, the sex trafficking activities. Because really, it's just the commodification of everything, the commodification of human sexuality. And, this guy, Adam22, saying, I care more about making money than I care about my, selling my wife's body online, when she's having sex with another man. It's money and commodities taking priority over everything. But Tate doesn't have the language to explain that. And like I said, if he did explain it, he'd end up criticizing himself. So it's just, isn't this beneath us? Which it is, it's like uncomfortable and weird to watch. And a lot of people enjoyed Tate's rant here. But again, this is why you need the systematic critique, the Marxist critique of capitalism, and the way that it commodifies everything, the way that all that is holy is profane.
Right. And it's, this is where like the specific form that like patriarchy takes within capitalism comes in. And as Pinay Yonsei has mentioned, the origins of private property are closely linked with the ownership of and commodification of women. And, what you have with the development of capitalism is a spread in prostitution and the commodification of women's bodies. What you have in like after the collapse of the Soviet Union, or better yet, the overthrow of the Soviet Union and the emergence of the shock doctrine that just destroyed, that region of the world and sent them into a postmodern era, like pre-modern era, excuse me, is you have the spread of prostitution, right? Because anything is up for commodification under capitalism, and that form of commodification is just one of the most vulgar and dehumanizing forms that it takes, and it's always taken that. And the vast majority of women that are forced to do that, those sorts of activity, they're forced to do that. They're trafficked, perhaps by guys like Tate. They're not like saying this is my self-empowerment, as some the few percentage that are actually millionaires from it are touting online. The vast majority of women are forced in that position, and instead of just embracing it as some liberal empowerment, we should criticize it and criticize the system that makes that necessary. No, teenage girl looking for a future is saying, yeah, when I turn whatever age, what I want to be is an OnlyFans star. That's absurd. It's a society that makes, people that could have otherwise been doctors or professionals or, whatever, virtuous professions, socially beneficial professions, that are forced to consider, hey, how am I going to pay back my student loans, or how am I going to do this? And the only way I can do that, because I'm a attractive woman, is by selling myself online. And we should study those objective conditions that lead people to make subjectively those decisions, and criticize them. Not the people specifically, the women that are forced into it, but the systems that make that a viable route, or a necessary route even for many women.
Right. And this person here says, who cares if him and his wife are fine with it? Why are you shaming? First of all, I want to say this is literally ANCAP or libertarian logic, right? That if people voluntarily sign into a contract, then that means it's automatically morally okay. And that means we can't critique the system that allowed for that contract to come into being, or that forced one of the people into an agreement, right? So we're definitely not criticizing sex workers or people who are forced into that situation to survive. We're critiquing the commodification of sex, the sale of everything, and the conditions that create a situation where people will prioritize money over all else. And the conditions that make people want to sell themselves, or feel pressure to sell themselves, or feel pressured to pimp out their wives or become sex traffickers, right? We're critiquing the conditions that allow these things to come into existence, and that promotes people like this as societal influencers, as leaders in our culture, in our society. So it's not even a critique of individuals; it's a critique of the society. And also, I expect more from you guys. Like, okay, I feel like I'm at an HR meeting now, getting lectured. Like, we have a difference of opinion. I'm sorry.
Do better, sweaty. I'm sorry, AJ, that was mean. I apologize. Let me just say though, in Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, Engels is describing the rise of capitalism, and he says here, as this comes into being, prostitution proliferates at a rate never before seen in human history. And he talks about how the right of first night, right, in which lords would have sex with women before they were married, was transferred from those lords to the bourgeoisie. And one of the ways this happens is dependence economically, right? Is especially, and this is one of the reasons the women's movement, the women's class struggle has been so important, right? Think about even before my parents were married, right? Before that era, women were sort of forced into this dependence on men because they weren't in the workforce like they are now, right? And this forces a version of prostitution, where in order to have some sort of stability in life, they need to be with a rich man, a man that can, bring home the bacon, as they say. And so, like, the women's struggle has always been focused around this. We are independent. We can do things ourselves. We want to work, right? We do not want to have to sell sex, right? And this, what we have in this modern era of imperialism crumbling like this, seems like the inverse of that, right? Where these middle-class women, and most of these are not working-class women at all, right? But middle-class women are saying, we want to sell sex. That should be what we do. And you know what? If that's what you're doing, fine. I'm not critiquing you. I'm critiquing a system that leads to this. That's what we're doing here, right? It is a system that commodifies sex and goes from this point Engels was talking about to the point where this guy is offering his wife to someone he considers a better man than himself, right? For money. That is what we're critiquing, that process, that change. I'm sorry, I don't mean to go off.
Sam Dixon says, if I remember right, Havana was a sex pest paradise before the revolution. It was, and then it moved right to Vegas because capitalism allows that. And if you look, every time capitalism has either like developed out of feudalism in history, or whether, you know, you look at the collapse of the Soviet countries and the reinstating of capitalism, in both cases, prostitution shot through the roof because conditions were created where women were pressured into selling their sex in order to survive, selling their bodies in order to survive. So, you know, in a sense, in that way, their bodies and human sexuality becomes commodified under capitalism. Whereas under socialism, that's done away with. And, you know, I'd say that's a good thing. Thank you so much, Kyle Pettis, for the $5 super chat. Our boy, appreciate you. Must have joined at a contentious moment, LMAO. I don't understand how being against the commodification of sex is anti-Marxist. Yeah, that's just liberal thinking that has infiltrated the Western left or the Western socialists or Western Marxists, to be honest. And, you know, it is important to say that we're not judging the sex workers themselves. They're people who are pressured into these situations, or, you know, people who, especially people who are kidnapped and drugged and forced into the sex trade, which is oftentimes what happens.
The majority.
Right. So, right. It is Marxist to be against these things and to be against the commodification of human sexuality in general.
And
and to be honest, the people that are the most critical of it are people who have been forced into that before. Like the loudest voices have been those people, and that represents a majority. That's not what is it that the right uses, the silent majority, because the loudest voices are this small group of elite who, because of their looks, luck, or followers, whatever the case might be, have been able to be successful in something like OnlyFans or whatever, and they make it seem like that's what the lifestyle entails, and that's nowhere near true for the vast majority of women who are forced into that. So, you know, that's the, you know, the critique that we're levying. It's critiques that we have heard women who have been in the trade before make. So it's not just coming out of nowhere, but it's also rooted in a Marxist analysis. And these are the positions that we've always had.
Yeah, let me just say one more thing on this. That in the period of my life I was talking about before, when I was addicted to drugs, right? I was friends with many, well, many is not accurate, but a few women who were doing this because that was the easiest way to get money for the drugs your body needed, right? And it caused so much self-loathing. None of them wanted to be doing this. It wasn't liberating for them. It was disgusting and dirty, and they felt compelled to do it, right? And it got violent and awful, and they were robbed multiple times. It's not this glamorous thing where there's, you know, one rich guy and one rich lady in general. It is not. It is gross, and it causes such like mental, emotional problems within the people forced to do it, that getting rid of the conditions that create this sort of thing is absolutely necessary. It is not empowering, okay? I'm sorry.
Right. Like as our friend said, over 80% of people who are in it want to leave, and the vast majority of people are forced into it by their economic conditions. The only people who aren't, the only people who do it as a hobby or for fun, are bourgeois women. Are honestly people like Adam 22. But even then, he's just trying to get more money from it. I guess the drive is still money. But those are the only people arguing that it's empowering, people who are already well off and who are just kind of bored or are chasing even more money than what they already have. So here's a great book, Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism and Other Arguments for Economic Independence by Kristen Godsey. I would check that out. And then here is Prostitution Ways of Fighting It by Alexandra Kollontai that our buddy Kyle Pettis recommended and also sent us another super chat. So thank you, Kyle. Yeah, recommend everybody read up on those. And again, it's not an attack on any individual. It's standing up for these individuals who are sucked into the sex trade.
There was a woman who used to live next door to my wife, right? Right when we first met. And she was a sex worker. We would hear people come in during the morning and then hear through the wall hours and hours of crying after that. All right. This isn't like a thing where we shaming her. No, we wanted to help her if we could. Right. But it's a system that creates this as a viable option for people. That's the problem.
Talk about his life. I just don't think it's the smart thing to do. And I don't think that it is. I don't have any interest in the personal sex life of any married couple, and I don't want to hear about it, and I don't want to talk about it. And I just find it very uncomfortable. I'm extremely uncomfortable in this situation.
Yet he's profiting off of all the terrible things that Noah just detailed, right? That's where it's like, that's what made me so angry about this too. I'm like, wow, Andrew Tate's kind of, in a lot of ways, he's spitting facts here, or he's at least the voice of reason in this crowd of nonsense. And then, it's like, is that really the state that things are at with these influencers, these people who are influencing the culture, where freaking Andrew Tate has to be the voice of reason on sexual issues, a literal sex trafficker, or at least somebody who's, making most of their money off of selling pornography? Like, come on.
That's the truth. And I'm not saying that from a position of weakness. I'm saying it from a position of strength. I don't like talking about these things. I don't like talking about women I don't like talking about what I do with women. I don't like talking about any of it. I think that what I do in the bedroom with a woman who I care about should be, to a degree, sacred. And I think it should be completely private. Absolutely. And I don't want to hear about anyone else. My relationship with sex involves love, and I don't think it should happen outside of love. And I think that's the way that sex should operate. And I think that when you decide, and once again, I could be wrong, when you decide to keep sex exclusively for love, there's something beautiful and special about it. And if you decide not to do that, then you keep chasing a new high. Eventually, you're constantly just chasing a new high, and you end up just doing something weird. Whereas if you just say, I only have sex with girls I love, then it's always special.
Yeah, so that was a pretty good speech. I think a lot of people are surprised by that. And, I think that's what it looks like when Andrew realizes he's becoming part of the matrix. Like, that was getting too close for him, and he just had to get the hell out of that conversation. And that's what talking to Aiden Ross for an hour and a half and then Adam 22 for like 10 seconds will do to you. You're going to be like, what is going on? These people are supposed to be influencers. These people are influencing society. If that's true, we are screwed. So I'm sure Andrew started to think about all that, and he's like, all right, I can't be part of this. And it's bad when the guy that ran cam model websites and OnlyFans accounts is the one saying this stuff. And I don't think anybody's even calling him a hypocrite for it, because I think at this point, people just take what they can get. If Andrew Tate needs to be the voice of reason, if he needs to talk some sense into these people, whatever, at least somebody's doing it. So let me know what you guys think about it all down in the comments.
And that's where Midwestern Marx comes in, baby. So now you have an alternative outside of Andrew Tate, and you can crush the system that allowed Andrew Tate to exploit and commodify women himself and make great profits off it before giving hypocritical speeches to people like Aiden Ross and Adam 22. But man, the Adam 22 story in general just blows my mind. I've been thinking about it a lot lately and hearing all these people react to it. It's just sad. It does remind me of that. I was going back and reading the manifesto, that part where Marx says, like, all that is solid melts into dust and all that is holy is profane. He's just talking about the capitalists, spreading everywhere, and how when a new system, a new mode of production emerges, the old one crumbles and falls apart. But it reminded me of this, like, there's nothing sacred anymore. There's nothing holy anymore under capitalism. Everything's commodified, including human sexuality and including, apparently, for some people, your own damn wife. the mother of your children. So, yeah.
It reminds me a bit of why people like Trump, even though he's a hypocrite, even though he governed pretty much the same as Obama, that, like the moment when he said to Hillary that he knows that the ruling class get out of all their taxes because he uses those loopholes. That was just so refreshing to people. And even the facsimile of that is enough, but it's not enough. Come right to us and we'll give you the real deal. And we will help show you how to actually smash that system rather than just whining at it like Tate does.
Nothing else from you, Carlos? Sorry, I was trying to wait my turn to speak.
No, yeah, I think it's very clear. We've hammered it out already that this is what happens to an economic system in decay, to a society that's falling, and it's very sad because it is influencing, millions of people's lives and the thought patterns of millions of kids that are going down, these routes that are deeply, deeply unhealthy for human beings, and that either reproduce a lot of that stupidity, or the people that place themselves as the opposite of that reproduce a lot of the old school misogyny that we've overcome or have largely overcome. And we have to escape that binary between the struggle of like the old explicitly like patriarchal racist capitalist culture, and the new one which is woke and which is much more subversive in the form that it controls people. Those are not the only two alternatives. And the way that they function today is that they feed into each other. They need each other in order to prop themselves up. And we have to be able to overcome both and not play into it, but play against it by showing the role that they have, the connection that they have to each other, and the fact that there's actual alternatives. And, that's a radical act. Like we take it for granted a lot of the time. We've been in the socialist left for a long time, but for most people, the idea that the way that things are now have not always been like this, and that they are subject to change, and that in other places in the world where things have been somewhat like this, people have been able to organize, get together, and change them for the better, is extremely radical. Because a lot of the times, what makes consent so easy, besides material factors, that if you don't consent to the existing order, how are you going to get a job, how are you going to feed your family, all those sorts of things, the form of resignation consent that Vivek Shibber talks about. But there's a form of consent that's rooted in the fact that what is accepted is the eternalization of something that's historically contingent, and that's a historical product. And that's what bourgeois ideology does. This is something that Marx criticized quite a bit, which is that it makes something historical something eternal. And when you break through that, that is so extremely powerful. And it's one of those things where you could substantiate it scientifically with a bunch of studies that show like it's been different. It is different now. And it's so powerful for people to understand that it doesn't have to be this way. And that in order for it not to be this way, in order for it to be better and to have a qualitatively new society, it's dependent on them. Not only making that realization, but understanding the system they're in, getting together with other people and fighting in an organized and revolutionary manner to overthrow it.
Yeah.
Fact. Well, thanks for taking that down with me, guys. I hope you can see why I didn't want to wade in by myself. I figured Noah would have some good angles to come at because of his history and knowledge about addiction. And then I just figured it'd be fun to hear Carlos break it down philosophically and stuff. But
do we want to address this?
I feel like we already did, but if you want, go for it.
Can you pull that last comment back up? Did you not hear everything I was just saying? It was legal. It was legal. It was consensual, but was it actually consensual, or did that hours and hours of crying arise from the fact that it's not really consensual?
Because they needed to be there because of their economic conditions, just like capitalism forces us to sell our labor in the market. Otherwise, we starve to death. And this is the argument you're making right now to defend pimps and prostituting out women is the argument that ANCAPs and libertarians use to defend capitalism. They say it's a voluntary agreement, therefore it's morally correct, and we can't do anything to change it.
And this
right?
is
It's not voluntary when you're separated from the means of production, separated from your means of life and producing your life, and forced to sell yourself in some way in order to survive. It's not voluntary.
And this is part of the problem of the fake left of the last period, that all this bourgeois thinking, which is what it is, bourgeois thinking and libertinism or hedonism or whatever you want to call it, has anything to do with the liberation of the working class. It is the exact opposite. Women being able to be liberated to the point where they decide who they have sex with without all of these mitigating factors. That is liberation. That is the women's struggle. And that is what we are behind. Not this like surface level, like you're prude if you don't like prostitutes. Like, come on. Have you seen what pimps do to prostitutes? That's a real thing. I've seen it up close. I've been in that fucking room. You haven't, okay? I'm sorry, I don't get all heated, but this shit pisses me off. It's dirty and gross, and if you'd actually seen it the way I had, you wouldn't be saying this kind of thing.
Absolutely. And it's so archetypical of like the bourgeois outlook, and it's such a blind spot on the modern left that just accepts anything that's packaging itself as liberal, and the newest liberal trends. It accepts it and it runs with it to make it as extreme as it can and to rationalize it from a pseudo-Marxist point of view. But it's essentially bourgeois, because what is that little fetish for consent that you have? What is it rooted in? What are the factors that led to that specific fact where there's a form of consent? Like, there were all factors that were centered on coercion, on the absence of consent, that led to a form of consent. It's the same thing. The example that Eddie gave is the perfect one. Like, yeah, we consent to be exploited. What the fuck is the alternative? Death. You know, what is the alternative? So what type of consent is that? In this logic, this fetish of consensuality, and it's not that consent is bad, of course, you know, it's important. But this fetish of consensuality is what leads to some of the stupidest views that I've ever seen in my life, which are these anti-natalist people. That there's a fucking lady suing her parents because they didn't ask her for consent to being born. That's like the logic of bourgeois consensualism and contractualism taken to its extreme, and you end up in positions that are literally anti-human, and like, I don't even know what to categorize it. It's not even stupid. It makes stupid look smart. And that's what we are dealing with in this culture of a system that's collapsing. And what we're seeing culturally is just pure degeneration in different forms, in this form of libertinism, in the form of the people that claim to oppose it but are just a mirror of it, taking us back to reactionary forms of patriarchy and all horrible things that we've overcome. We have to reject both of those cultural war alternatives and develop instead a socialist culture here and now. Be the people that other people can emulate, walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
For
Look,
sure.
I want to apologize for sort of going off. I didn't mean that as a personal attack on the person who said that comment. They said like they just wanted to provide a two cents. Just think critically when you hear anything called empowerment, anything you hear called radical. Think critically about it and like dig down to the roots of it, because it's important. People get hurt with this shit. For real, for real.
Right. Now, I like what this person's saying about, you know, you can organize sex workers on the same lines because they, you know, they're exploited. And this guy says, thank you so much, Leo, for the super chat. He works in drawing 18 enough stuff and trying to leave that because him and his family were starving and he couldn't find a job. That's the problem. That's the reason. I imagine, you know, this is the case for so many people who work in this industry, they don't really want to be there, but maybe they have drawing skills like you, or maybe they just can't find anything else, or they want to be a filmmaker, but all they can find is work in the adult film industry, and you get sucked into it like that, or coerced into it. And it's what if somebody who doesn't want to be in that industry was forced into it by under threat of starvation or coerced into it, and they hear communists and leftists being like, no, sex work's awesome, prostitution's awesome, let's keep the sex trade going as long as it's more progressive, we'll just make it more progressive, or whatever that even means. No, a lot of people want to be liberated from these conditions, so we should advocate liberating people from these conditions, in my opinion. But Kyle Pettit's another super chat, killing it today. Thank you so much, Kyle, our trucker and organizer friend. He said, communists must fight against bourgeois morality. They are inherently tied to their institutions. We must build a new culture. Most workers understand this. It's only the synthetic left that's like this. Absolutely right. And that's kind of, you have to break out of these echo chambers a little bit. I was really, really scared to speak out on the sex worker issue and give the Marxist position on sex work, because people on TikTok were so just would attack you as anti-sex worker. You're, hating on these women, attacking these women, which of course was not the position. And at the point, I finally realized it was ridiculous when I made a tweet about how I make the personal choice not to watch pornography. Because a lot of those women are coerced into that situation, doped up on drugs and pimped out. And for all those reasons, I don't watch it. And then synthetic leftists started attacking me for being anti-sex worker, for making the personal choice to not watch pornography, to not consume it myself. They were saying I was being anti-sex worker and spreading anti-sex worker sentiments. And that's when I realized, this is ridiculous. And it's bourgeois morality, right? It's put in this progressive veneer, and made to look like it's progressive, when it's the opposite. It's the bourgeoisie profiting off of sex. And we covered a while back this TED Talk about feminist pornography, pornography that's centered on women and that has more shots that are, appealing to women rather than appealing to men. And it's like over 80% of the women are, coerced in there. A lot of them, they purposefully dose them with drugs and get them addicted to drugs, so they have to keep selling themselves over and over and over again. There's no progressive form of that. There's no progressive form of the capitalist sex trade, the black market that exists. It's bourgeois. It represents the commodification of human sexuality. That's what it is. So, and shoot, I had someone else said, I had this start earlier. What is the ML answer for a culture of degeneracy? One, abolishing the sex trade, honestly. But then offering people alternatives, alternative things to do, ways to develop themselves, ways to participate culturally. We always quote that statistics that 70 to 75% of Russians say that they wish they still lived in the Soviet system. And what they miss is economic stability and employment and healthcare and things like this, for sure. But the number one thing they say they miss is the culture, the collective culture, the sort of spirit that we are building something better together. And all these different things like theater programs and sports and all these different things that workers could participate in, that were offered by the government and by the party, and supported by the Soviet economy, that brought people together and gave them activities to do outside of the workplace. So that's what a Marxist-Leninist or a socialist society can offer: real fulfilling activities that allow people to develop themselves, and the time and the freedom from stress to be able to do those things. Right? Because even now, I know my dad has had this problem forever. When we go on vacation, he's always worried about money and worried about, getting back to work and making more money. So you offer people under socialism freedom from that stress, the release of those chains, so people can actually engage in activities that develop themselves and allow them to be around others in the community. It offers them those, rather than, saying make a bunch of money and then once you get to the top, just spend it on degeneracy.
That's such a good point, because, the workday doesn't just end when we clock out. It bleeds into the rest of our days. It makes us tired. when we're tired, it limits the sorts of things that we could do, and it's something that stems way beyond the 8 to 10 hours that you do it with. And when you think about, like, well, how much time do I spend sleeping? How much time do I spend working? How much time do I spend recovering from work? And you realize that you don't live. You don't actually live. You can't have that freedom to create and to flourish. And, just to address the question of how can we combat that, I think we're going to have to develop a notion of a communist virtue ethic. We're going to have to do that. And it's been implicit in previous socialist, communist, Marxist theorists, Lenin, Che, Mao, Ho Chi Minh, and many others. But I think we're going to have to make it explicit. And this is one of the classes, the next class I have next Wednesday for my Marxism and the History of Western Philosophy class. We're doing that. We're looking at Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, seeing what virtue ethics entails there, and what a communist form of virtue ethic could look like by looking at Lenin's speeches to the youth leagues and by looking at Che's speech to the youth league. And it's a whole nother different form of conceptualizing success and of conceptualizing growth, right? Today's success and growth is tied to the accumulation of capital. In a socialist society, in the form of people that we want to be, and in the sort of society that we want to construct, success and growth is always going to be tied to human flourishing. It's going to be tied to, are the conditions there for people to be the best types of people that they can be in a way that's compatible with the community, that develops both the community and that it's developed by the community. And, we can begin to embody that now in our organizations. And when we do that, we're going to present alternatives to people that are not Tate and that are not these other idiots that are just a reflection of that.
Yeah, let me get to this. Leo, thank you so much for the super chats, brother. This is awesome. This is true. So he says, my grandma-in-law, if that exists, sure, it exists, told me that in the USSR, vacations are fully covered, free trip wherever you want, free shelter, and you still got paid. And yes, your family is covered. This is true. Not anywhere you wanted to go. It depended on where you lived and what was available in your area, but you got that entire vacation paid for. Your entire family went with you, and you went and had fun at this community. You didn't have to pay for it. It was all part of your compensation for work, right?
It's like having a free timeshare.
Exactly. Exactly.
Given to you by the government.
Like if timeshares weren't a scam and they actually were yeah.
I got free tickets to Six Flags one time because my parents went and listened to a spiel. People trying to sell them a timeshare. They're so good at their spiel, though. They can give away tickets and still convince some people to buy.
Right,
they'll get mad at you if you say no. They'll be like, "How could you? You wasted our time. You kept us here. And now you're not even gonna buy."
Reminds me of that episode of Always Sunny, where they go to get the free golf clubs and end up buying 3 timeshares. It's like, we took the prick for 3.
That's exactly it.
And Frank's like, you don't think he wanted to sell you as many as he could?
Oh, man. Thank you so much, Ross, for telling us or encouraging us to do that. And I agree. It's something that we want to work on. It's something I've really liked that idea for a while because, Marxism doesn't talk about morality much or how to live your own life other than, be disciplined and be part of the Communist Party and work to struggle for the revolution. But, I think that's really important. And Carlos has already written about it somewhat in his Che and the Man in Cuba. Is that the name of it, Carlos? And so I recommend people read that if they're interested.
I also have a new paper on a new version of the Walk the Walk paper that we got to get up soon. Carlos's is much more theoretically sound. Mine is just kind of good advice.
Mine was just a translation. It was the first thing we did I just had like an introductory paragraph where I talk about, it's some of the ethics that I have found in socialist organizing that kind of fetishize defeat and victimhood, and that's not the sort of thing that we should be emulating. Even though we should treat with compassion people that have certain difficulties, we shouldn't fetishize it. And that, something like the strength of character is not a negative thing. It's not purely bourgeois or whatever. It's something that can take different forms, and how you end up defining that strength is really part and parcel of the form that it takes, right? When you consider strength of character to be, how many people can you shaft and step on in order to get to the top and be the richest person or the best seller in your company or whatever. That's a form of bourgeois strength. We wouldn't consider that from our perspective strength. From our perspective, it'll be, how much can you study, prepare yourself, work in your community, donate your time to helping others and helping them be better versions of themselves. And these ideas are not like absent. In a lot of sports, you have them, right? Some of the best players in many games are considered not just on the merits of their own ability to play, but what effect did they have on their teammates? Like, did they make their teammates better? There's a lot of basketball players that they're excellent, but they don't win rings because they make, for some reason, the people around them worse.
It's the Derek
there was
Jeter effect. Sorry, he's just such a good
Yeah.
example of that. Like he would bat 300 in his good years, which is amazing, but a lot of years, he didn't. But everyone was like, he's such a great leader. He's so
Right.
good for the team. He led the Yankees to so many titles. They were always good when he was there.
And there's so many teams that are stacked, like whether it's basketball or baseball, with just all-star lineups, and they just don't win. I remember there was this one year with the Lakers where they had just the stupidest starting five, insane. Like, just people. I think maybe like 3 MVP players within the recent years in the starting five, and then Kobe, and their backups were insane, and they did horrible, and it's because it didn't mix. And we recognize that characteristic as virtuous today. Like, can you help those around you? And that's part of like reorienting that, like, towards socialism. Yeah, this is good. This is what we're talking about. Now let's systematize it. Let's put it up against this other belief that you might have that ties success to money and accumulation and all these different things. And you see the effects. And that's what one of the things that I pointed out the first day of our philosophy class for the Marxism school was that a lot of the things that are central to our worldview are already accepted in the common sense of the American people. And you see it through like dictums and things that they come up with, like, don't miss the forest for the trees, or don't judge a book by its cover. There's a bunch of these. And in this area, there's also many. What they don't understand is how it's contradictory to other ones. And I think that's the sort of job that we have to parcel out and reorient the rational ones towards where we need them to go. But it's not that hard a task.
Right. Sorry, I'm excited about the sports analogy now too, but that's one of the things that I feel like NFL scouts or professional scouts don't always realize. Like, they put so much stock into combine numbers, which is just like, how much do you bench? How fast can you sprint? How high can you jump? It's like the greatest NFL football player of all time, Tom Brady, had a terrible combine. So he got drafted 5th. But every team that passed him up was probably kicking themselves because he's an amazing leader, an amazing teammate. He just knew how to win. And like, my brother and I have been involved in sports forever. Our dad was our coach growing up. And like, every year with the NFL draft, we just facepalm at some of the picks that these teams make. Like when Johnny Manziel got drafted almost first round, it's like, I get it. He's extremely talented, but I have seen athletes like this. I have seen athletes who care more about partying and care more about the fame than they care about, helping their team win or being part of the team or giving it your all out there on the field. And that makes them toxic to the team. But a lot of NFL scouts are just looking at the numbers, and physical attributes like it's a video game, and they don't see this. So I couldn't agree more with the points you were making in relation to that.
And there's many that are not. Like, we had this conversation a few months ago, but it was when the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup had happened, and I was listening in on a segment of Specialist, and I was like, holy shit, that's the dialectics of soccer. They were talking about the importance of seeing, teams as a whole and individuals as a whole, and like not just their performance in a specific thing, but their psychological and the mixture with that and the physical and their environment and who they are outside, who they are inside, and how that tracks their development, and being able to see these players and their development and not just like where they are right now, like what's their trajectory. And it was like getting all the things right, like see things in their interconnection and their development and their relationship to the whole, and in the contradictions that they might have. And they were just hitting all the right notes, but in the sphere of soccer analysis. And I think that that's in part what distinguishes a good scout from like a bad one, or a good coach from a bad one.
Absolutely, it is. It is. Right, someone who can see things dialectically, or see the intangibles, you might say, or how a person's how they're gonna affect the team environment, how they're gonna affect the collective, because the individual is connected to his teammates. So, when I look at who I think is gonna be good in the future, or I mean even recruiting for wrestling, which is like a
Right.
huge part of my past job, I would see how kids interacted with their teammates. And if they were positive with their teammates and they weren't cocky or arrogant or a jerk, that made me so much more inclined to get those kids. And, the kind of team that we were building then in college was a team that was super supportive of each other, like a team where kids were coming into my office all the time to ask me about philosophy. They were just happy to be there and they were flourishing in that environment. And part of that was because of the way they interacted with each other. But we should probably hit some of these super chats. I missed three.
Real quick before you do that, Eddie, I just want to say that's exactly how I used to play pretty serious soccer back in the day. It's exactly how the best players on the team were. And that was why they were the best players and why the team won, because they would take the time to talk to players that weren't as good, like me, and make us better, because they were better when we were better.
You probably get that even more in a team sport, because wrestling, like, I was always on good teams, and that was always my dad's focus as a coach, was how do we make the team good, which, go figure, I ended up being a communist. But in wrestling, it's an individual and a team sport, so there's like that dialectic there, where they're basically opposites. But you get a lot of wrestlers who are just selfish, kind of jerks, versus, but there are a lot who are more team oriented, and those are that having that team culture going into a dual meet or something truly does help, and when it gets to the middle of the season, like, and you don't want to go into practice, you use if you care about your teammates, it's a huge motivator. And that goes for competition too. Your teammates are a huge. I knew guys who, like, for individual tournaments, they would literally go out and get pinned twice. They wouldn't try. But then if the team needed them in a dual meet, they would pin like top 10 guys, because they would go so freaking hard for their friends. But yeah. Anyways, getting to now we got 4 super chats. Battle Cossack, thank you so much. Sending us those dollars from Argentina. Appreciate you. The Hours of the Furnaces. Los Horas de los Hornos? ¿Cómo se dice furnaces?
To be honest, I don't know what a furnace is. What comes to mind is like a chimney.
It's like a thing that you burn wood in that keeps your house warm.
No, the furnace isn't wood burning, right? That'd be a wood burning. Your furnace is like what your main heat in your house is, like down in the basement. when like the pilot goes out, that's the furnace. Come on, guys.
You can't put wood in there.
Although it could be a reference to an oldie timey thing, like a furnace, at a blacksmith or.
But yeah, I have not seen that. Have not seen that movie, but maybe I'll check it out, and then maybe we'll know what furnaces are. So I know it's about
Battle
Argentina.
Cossack is Argentinian. There's this wonderful Argentinian movie that I love. Damn it, the name is slipping, but it's artist that he kind of hates the world, and he used to be huge, and he ends up he ends up just basically becoming a drunk and a nuisance, and he fakes his death and just moves to a village to continue painting. And that's when he really blows up after everyone thinks he's dead. And he does this like wonderful social criticism as the message right before he supposedly commits suicide. But I'll see if I find the name. And
Cool. Apolitical idealist, thank you again. How do we unite ultras, Maoists, patriots, commies? Well, I think we need class unity more so than left unity is one thing I always say, and these things need to be debated. And that's why we talk about a lot of the most contentious issues and put out, a line. So, what it's often referred to is every party or every group has their line, their positions, especially on these contentious issues. And, we put out our line. And then we will hear anyone out who has a different line, or and maybe come to an agreement in certain ways or find a sort of synthesis. So you can do that, but ultimately we need to just focus on organizing class struggle, and everybody is going to have their unique everyone's going to have unique opinions on certain things, or divergence of opinion on certain things. I guess what's most important is recognizing when these things are to be debated and when they aren't. Like a stream like this is a good chance to discuss some of these more contentious issues and go back and forth. A community organizing event probably isn't. An effort to unionize a workplace, they probably don't. If you end up in some debate with a Maoist about, the state of modern China, all the workers are going to tune out and be like, what the hell are these guys even doing? So there's a time when you need unity of action.
So that's true. And this is part of why organization is so important, because that organizing on the ground really makes questions like this go into the background. Honestly, when we're organizing our class and drawing support, it's about gaining concrete support behind the organization or achieving the goals, right? So whether you're an ultra or a Maoist or whatever, or a regular communist, it doesn't really enter the picture. It's get the class struggle forward, right? I don't know what a pat sock is. It sounds like some sort of patio furniture from Southern California, maybe a patrol of socks, where you have to go looking for socks around the neighborhood, or it could be socks that go on patrol. I think that would be my preference, like cartoon socks, and they all got arms and legs. They're patrolling the neighborhood, looking for crime or whatever. That would be cool. I would unite them with them for sure. But it's also about finding out who the friends and enemies of the people are, right? And this is something that Mao talked about. If someone is trying to wreck organizing and divide us based on them saying, oh, the American working class is all evil and they need to shut up and listen to me tell them what's right, that's someone who's going to be hard to organize with, right? So it's less about uniting these labels and more about just the concrete class struggle, dropping all these labels and getting shit done. You know what I mean? Oh, you are not audible, brother. I will keep talking while Carlos fixes his audio, though. So really,
I got it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. To get to that point, the interview segment that Chris Smalls did with the Labor Summit with comrades from RBN was really good, and we snipped a minute and a half of it, where he talks about, you're not organizing on the basis of ideology, you're doing so on the basis of class. And that's extremely important. And that's how he was able to do something so historic, such as organize an Amazon facility, which hadn't been done before. It was failed in Alabama and failed. I think the other failure was in Staten Island. He did it in Staten Island, the only red borough in New York, sometimes called Trump Island. And he succeeded because he wasn't going to people saying, what are your thoughts on A, B, C, D, E? issues like a grocery list. He was just like, hey, you're a fellow worker, you're getting screwed just like I am. Let's fight against this and let's do it. And he was doing new things that old school unions don't do. Like he was doing barbecues, and not only barbecuing with the people in the community, but also like handing out weed and stuff. And he was just one of the people, and that's how he was able to lead the people and gain their confidence. And that's what organizing is all about. Organizing is not, okay, we got all these different ideologies on the internet. How are we going to bring them together? No. Focus on the people is the thing I would say. Thank you so much, Battle.
Oh, I'm sorry. Drop all the labels and just get shit done. That's what it's all about. And by the way, everybody who's saying Pat Sock is patriotic socialist, I know. I'm making a joke as to the silliness of the label and how it was nowhere and then everywhere. And I think we should, along with dropping all these other labels, just drop it. There's no reason we should say Pat Sock ever. If we're saying Pat Sock, we're playing a game that the bosses want us to play. The most important thing is who is interested in uniting and who is interested in dividing.
Not you, apparently, because you're a chauvinist Pat Sock.
He's patio furniture. Wow.
No, that was good. I was leaving the room to go to the bathroom right as I heard you say, what is a Pat Sock? Is that some kind of patio furniture? I started laughing my ass off. Oh, I should hit him with the...
Thank you so much, Battle Kozak, once again for the 50 Argentinian dollars. Do we want to read it?
We need a plan. You guys already read that one.
No, we had. We need a plan to rebuild America into a socialist utopia in case a nuclear war happens. Just in case, you never know what the neocons are planning. Yeah, I don't know about a socialist utopia, but I do think we should be thinking ahead and on the basis of like what we understand to be really fucked up now, start crafting what would a different society be doing with the resources that we have, with the potentials and capabilities that we already have. What can we do? How can we fix what's wrong? And start always from the concrete, not from like dreaming out an ideal that's disconnected from reality, but something that you could see directly leading out of the current way that things are. I think PSL tried to do that in a book that they just did, Socialist Reconstruction. I've looked it over a little bit. It's not bad. I have some criticisms of it, but I think an attempt like that is something good, and it's something concretely that you can offer people. Like, hey, you think this is fucked up? This is what socialism would look like. This is why it would solve problems A, B, C, or D. As far as the nuclear war, yeah, I think that's getting to be a reality that's closer and closer to us, and it is going to have to affect the organizing that we do in it. It might end up having to put us on, coalitions for specific things that we might have not expected. But nothing will bring more suffering to all types of people than a nuclear war would. And we have to do everything to prevent that. So be open to whatever possibilities arise in the people, and whatever coalitions begin to craft themselves between people that share the sentiment, the anti-war sentiment.
Yeah, if war breaks out with Russia, like the censorship is going to get out of control, and a lot of things will change for the worse. So it's definitely good to be prepared for all that.
Also, I think it's important to understand that no revolution in all of history has looked the way people thought it would look even 20 years beforehand. That revolutionary eras are the eras in which you find out who's for real and who isn't. And all it takes is the people that are for real. Don't judge them. Don't cancel them. Don't tell them they can't come. You need them. You need every single person you can get in any single way they can contribute. I hear a lot of, from activists specifically, people who disregard the internet, right? Because they're not doing real work going to protests. Protests are good. So is online education. So is everything. You need it all. Again, just look for who is uniting and who is dividing.
Right. And I think we. Oh, there goes the seaweed. I think we do have to do a critique of the people that reduce it to one or the other. And like the activist brain, I think it's what you usually call it. It's a really good. People who think that you're only ever doing anything if you're standing outside on a weekend basis with a sign and taking a picture and boosting your profile as a revolutionary. That should be critiqued. Not because the activity of protests are bad or unhelpful, but because alone it's not going to achieve anything. You know, it's got to be blended with a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of other forms of organizing and education and agitation, which cannot be reduced to just standing out there with a few signs and screaming some slogans, helpful though it might be.
Yeah.
So, Leo, thank you so much for the $2. What do you mean by soccer? It's football. There you go. Yeah. It's soccer in America.
FUTBOL.
Football.
Football.
Another question from Leo. Thank you so much. In 2018, this Protestant conspiracy.
Protestant conspiracy theorist, I think.
Who was a candidate for president here in Brazil, said that there was a secret plan to turn the whole South America into a socialist country. He called it Ursal. Man, how I wish. Yeah, that would be incredible. And I think Farabundo Martí, famous Central American revolutionary, Ramiro calls him the father of Central American Marxism and communism. He had proposed something like a Central American unity state, which I'm not sure if I remember correctly if it was able to materialize for some years or not. But I definitely do think that, you know, the same case you have with Africa right now, where Pan-Africanism is really the only solution for individual African countries. Like, you know, fuck these lines that were created by the colonists and the colonizers. Like, you know, we as a people are going to unite and fight against imperialism and neocolonialism. The same thing with Latin America. We need a solid understanding of Pan-Americanism, akin to how Martí talked about Nuestra América, like our America. You know, we will fall or rise together. And whether it's Central America, South America, or the Caribbean, like, these are all places that have been imperialized and colonized for the last 500 years, and their lot is with standing with each other against imperialism and not dividing over, you know, petty differences. So yeah, a whole South American socialist unity would be awesome.
Pan-South Americanism.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cal Pettis, for another super chat. Exactly. Class solidarity is key, bringing communism to the workers through the expression of their interests, like unions. Who cares about echo chambers? That's so right. And there's this quote from Noah's paper in the second issue of the Journal of American Socialist Studies, where he takes it from Gus Hall's on petty bourgeois radicalism. And he says, you know, you can make up the nicest idea in the world, it can sound as rational as possible, but if people do not see their self-interest in what you're saying, they're not going to follow.
Absolutely. Yeah, they don't. What he's saying is that people don't respond to commands. They don't respond to slogans. Even if they're good slogans, even if your ideas are great, even if you're commanding them in this great way, unless their self-interest is reflected in what you're telling them, they're not going to follow you. And you don't deserve that at that point, because you're not realizing that at the same time they're following you, you're following them.
Double dings. I like it. Good job, Noah. Out of the movement, get to the masses. Yeah, I think that's a good slogan.
Double dings is what Adam 22 wanted. I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Battle Kozak. Out of the movement to the masses. Yeah, we have to be amongst the people. Remember the
I'm
11th
putting Noah on
thesis.
mute so he can finish laughing.
Remember the 11th thesis on Feuerbach, not the 11th thesis, but the document itself. One of them, I think it's the fourth. It says the educator must themselves be educated, and it's brought up in a different context. But in the case of leading the people and taking the role of like a revolutionary educator, you also have to educate yourself by learning from the masses, and you can only do that when you're with the masses, not when you are in insular spaces of like movements that are the same, few hundred groups of people that hit the streets every weekend or whenever something happens. And not that that's bad, but if that's all we're doing, we're going to end up kind of where we're at, which is with a crisis of the subjective factor while we're in the face of a objectively pregnant revolutionary condition.
Absolutely.
I've been organizing for a while.
No, go ahead, Noah.
Oh, sorry. I couldn't tell if you had muted or unmuted me.
Unmuted.
You're unmuted. Yeah, sorry.
I assume you muted me while I couldn't stop laughing. If you've been organizing for a while, you realize that it's the same groups, right? Appealing to themselves and each other. And that ain't going to cut it anymore. That cut it in the last period because we weren't in a revolutionary period. The left had been completely destroyed. And then all the pieces that were left after that destruction got ground up into dust when the Soviets fell. And then, I mean, Gus Hall dying, and it was just gone, right? And so we have this sort of tradition that begins in that period of only appealing to ourselves because there ain't nobody else. Right? But we need to get out of that mindset now.
Yeah,
Because,
you get.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say you get activist brain. I've heard you guys call it that if you spend too much time in these circles, and
right.
I've even heard of people making critiques of communist parties, like or certain anti-imperialist or communist leading parties in the U.S. where they brought up at party meetings, like, why don't we go to a union meeting or try getting to the workers? And then, party leadership says, no, let's continue to focus on these protests. Let's continue to focus on, getting out and holding up signs with other activists who already think the same way as us, because that's comfortable and it feels good, and you're going to get a pat on the back from people, but it's not necessarily what's needed. We need to go into places where it's uncomfortable for us and share our ideology and explain to people what communism actually is. Not
right. They call it building the movement, but the movement isn't being built because the movement is the people, the actual movement. Why do we call it a movement? Because history is moving, right? And these are supposed to be the people who help that process along. But that's not happening with this movement, right? What we really need is a relationship between support and revolutionaries. Right. And creating support is just as important as educating revolutionaries. And if revolutionaries are being educated, then they know this about support.
And I'll tell you, as a content creator, so to speak, this activist brain is so tempting, or just speaking to the same people is so tempting. Like, I remember the first time I went to a climate strike with my girlfriend at the time and just posted a picture of us there with holding our sign, All of a sudden it blew up and got all like 700 likes, and I only had like 1,000 some followers on Instagram. I was like, what the hell? I mean, it felt good though, and that it encourages you to post more stuff like that. And what got us banned on TikTok was constantly focusing on the most contentious issues in the world right now and taking the correct position, right? I could have very, very easily just steered away from anti-imperialism and towards liberalism, and I would have 1 million freaking followers on TikTok right now, and I'd probably be an influencer like Aiden Ross or whatever. It's very easy to fall into this and just fall into what's comfortable and, talk about how conservatives have a brain disease all day. It'd be very easy for us to do a show like Hassan Piker's to try and make money, but that's not where it's at. It's at actually trying to reorient people's consciousnesses towards socialism. It's about changing people's mind. It's about recruiting new working class comrades to the movement. And that's what we're in the business of doing. We're not in the business of getting a pat on the back, from the existing liberal left.
Beautifully said, brother. And it slipped my mind what I was gonna say. You can go ahead, Noah.
I'm sure it was insightful.
Yeah, it's just when you focus only on appealing to these certain people, it can allow the revolutionary edge to be blunted, right? Where if it's okay for this certain group to simply go to a protest, then that's all that happens, right? And your activism can become liberal activism rather than revolutionary activism. And there's a big difference between these things. The Netflix walkout that the entire left was all about, right, was middle class collaborationist activism. It wasn't, hey, we have workers who are discriminated against here. Hey, the women here or the LGBT women here, etc., get paid less. It was none of that. It was Dave Chappelle said something we considered mean. We want to make the decisions so that we can make sure Dave Chappelle is gone. That was what it was. And they walked out over that. How comfortable do you got to be to do that? Right? It was so careerist, too. It was very, very, again, middle class. And when we're stuck in this sort of activist space, not talking to the regular workers, they probably could have talked to anyone on the production crew and gotten a laundry list of complaints, demands that they could have organized around. But did they? No. Because they had that activist brain. It's a real thing. And not that activism is wrong. Activism is good. Join a group, right? Join an organization, but make sure you are embedded within the working class. Make sure you are always educating yourself in Marxism. Make sure you are always doing a revolutionary activity so that you don't get that activist brain. Don't get stuck in an echo chamber.
Absolutely. And we have to develop the ability to be uncomfortable with comfort, because it is when we're in positions of comfort that growth is stifled, right? And that applies for working out, that applies for studying, that applies for most things. That it's out of breaking through comfort and making something that yesterday was uncomfortable comfortable, and then doing a little bit more, and that growth is able to happen.
Yep.
Real quick, let me just add this. It wasn't that great of a special, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah, it was not his best.
No.
For sure.
It was no Chappelle.
What people should be mad at Dave Chappelle about is what he did to all the people in his neighborhood who he lived with.
Yep.
Fighting against, what was it, like a public housing project or something like that?
He lives close to me, by the way.
Because he just wanted rich people, other rich people like him, other wealthy socialites to be living in the area, no dirty pores. So,
yeah, he's from.
I guess you could be mad at Dave Chappelle for whatever you want, but that's why I was mad at him.
He's from a suburb that's like a 40-minute drive from my house.
Nice. ML is already patriotic in a way because it rejects national nihilism. Patsock is redundant. Yeah, and at this point, it's just used as like, I don't even know what people think it is. The other day, I heard it was saying like, someone asked, what's a patsock in our chat? And someone else goes like, a white supremacist socialist. I'm like, oh, geez. So that's what people are accused. People think we're white supremacists when they call us patsock. Like, the word means something different to everyone. But, we just reject national nihilism, which is, a basic thing that any Marxist should do. You need to understand the history and the conditions of your own country. So, and you need to understand that, those conditions make it what it is today. And, all we can do going forward is make it better, understand the contradictions that exist and try and alleviate them or try and attack them. America is more backwards than Russia before Lenin. I don't know. It's quite the That's a bold statement there, political.
Big claim.
There's a lot of anti-Semitism and hate, like open hate groups in Russia. But yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. So
it was called the Prison House of Nations. It was horrific, the conditions that regular people were in, and just the massacres of protesters. And it was horrible. Like read the biggest Russian literary figures and how they talk about that the period. Read the Russian left wing populists like Chernyshevsky and how they talk about not just pre 1917 Russia, but like the Russia of the late 19th century. And read Lenin, and you'll see that statement is not very accurate. Maybe America before the Civil Rights Revolution, but definitely not America now.
Thoughts on another one from a political idealist. Thank you. Thoughts on, and good questions, Pan-Arabism / fake Middle East nations. Yeah, I know the idea behind Pan-Arabism is similar to Pan-Africanism, the idea that all Arab nations should unite, but I am not an expert. I am not going to give a good answer to your question or expound on it just because it's not my area, not my field. I honestly know more about Pan-Africanism than I know about Pan-Arabism. But it's my understanding that Pan-Arabism includes the North African countries, right? Like Libya. And so that kind of put it in contradiction with Pan-Africanism, and Pan-Arabism kind of died out more so a decade or two ago, and Pan-Africanism has maybe become more popular. I don't know if that's correct. I heard that somewhere, that those two ideas were in contradiction a little bit, and Pan-Arabism has become less popular than it was in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s even. I don't know, though. Don't quote me on that because I know almost nothing about Pan-Arabism. I'm pretty sure, was Assad a Pan-Arabist and then he kind of abandoned that idea, correct? Maybe you guys don't know either, but clearly we're not the people to ask about Pan-Arabism, but if we study more, we'll bring it back up.
Yeah, I know quite a bit more about Africa and Pan-Africanism than Pan-Arabism, unfortunately.
And we have I think one more super chat before we get going. We've been on for 2 hours and 11 minutes now, but thank you so much, Cal Pettis, again, for the $5 donation. Activism is a strategy. It's only as useful as its aims, and if those aims are not Marxist, it's performative. Workers are done with performance, absolutely. Especially since so much of what the elite does is performance. And what always comes to mind is that idiotic image of the Democratic Party DNC leaders with, tribal scarves during the BLM protests and taking a knee. Like, what more performative bullshit than that do you want? Like the same people that are in part responsible directly for the conditions of violence and imprisonment that not just black people, that poor people in general in the U.S. face, are there taking a knee and putting on the whole performance, the spectacle, and the people don't buy it anymore. I think they are elitist and they don't really understand what the people think, and they don't see that the vast majority of people see that, and they're like kind of disgusted by how stupid it is. Maybe a small stratum of middle class white folks don't think like that, but the vast majority of people are just like, this is fucking stupid. We can see what they're trying to do with the spectacle.
Yeah, and a lot of it is sort of forced, honestly, and LARPy, and people see that. And if it's like, if you're not people see everything these days. We live in an age. I mean, think about the war right now, right? The proxy war in Ukraine going on. Why is Ukraine losing? Because Russia can see every single thing they do. They cannot do anything without them knowing about it, because technology is just at this point. We're at a point, and this is all over society in every aspect. We're at this point in society where people see everything. Everything. They see you in aggregate all trolling on the internet rather than being serious. They see 6 people on a street corner and one of them has a gun for security, right? They see that and they see it as unserious. And a lot of times that kind of stuff goes on the internet. It blows up. We have to always understand that we're building a brand, whether we like it or not. And that brand must be taken seriously, right? And so activism has to have a point. It has to have a point, and it has to, frankly, look good for the cameras, whether we're comfortable with that fact or not. It has to play well. People have to understand what you're doing and agree with it and say, what they're doing, that's going to help me. That's going to help my family. I'm all about that.
For sure. I'm trying to make sure. I tried to put someone in the chat on a timeout. I'm trying to make sure I didn't permanently ban them. But yes, I agree with everything that you said. You guys want to finish going through these super chats?
I did that the other day too, and it said banned as well. So I don't
Oh,
know.
and it was just a timeout. Okay, good.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I don't. They could still be banned. I have no idea.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jack Zay. USA, how do we change the vibes that left equals anti-masculine? Hard to spread CC. Do you guys know what CC is?
Class consciousness, maybe?
Good. Class consciousness when young working class men, before even understanding politics, drift right because they see left as weak, feminine, etc. That's a good point, and I think that's part of what we were trying to target today with looking at people like Tate-Ross and Adam22 and Tate and the others, and this whole subculture of streamers that some of them are feeding into the libertinism and the weaknesses of character, right? Not only like lack of some form of a virtuous, non patriarchal masculinity, but just like sheer weakness in any form. And, the opposite of that, which is the return to a more misogynistic sort of masculinity that's found in people like Tate and many others that are just saying horrific, backwards things about women's. Perhaps there's others that have done it worse than Tate now. I've seen some videos online that are just disgusting, but we have to provide an alternative to that doesn't feed into the binary, that overcomes it, and that shows how it is that binary is two parts that require the other for them to exist. They're interrelated, they're interpenetrative, and interdependent. And we have to be able to present ourselves as the only genuine possible counter-hegemonic force to, as they say, escape the matrix or whatever. A lot of the people that talk about escaping the matrix, some of the matrix's most important reinforcement agents, it's actual communist Marxist-Leninists that are actually interested in escaping the matrix, because the matrix is just the capitalist mode of life and a specific moment of decay that produces a lot of the things that you seem to be hinting at here.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Where does the term toxic masculinity come from? It comes from these sorts of people, right? And so it's important to understand that sort of thing is not genuinely masculine, because it's such a performance. And it's secondarily that being masculine, there ain't nothing wrong with that. That's why people go towards the right, because they see from the left this anti-masculinity thing. This sort of everything that, the sort of middle class type of fake left that developed in the last period does, as being against that masculinity. So anyone who, is interested in the sort of things we are, combat sports, working with the type of things that are traditionally considered masculine, right? They go towards the right because they see such this unacceptance with anything deemed traditional. And so it's important to embody just being yourself. First of all, if you're a masculine person, ain't nothing wrong with that. And secondarily, explain how what that middle class is not left, right? That is not genuinely pushing for social progress, right? Not in the actual material sense of the word, not in the Marxist sense, which is the only sense a left has any sort of material bearing, right? Because unless you're pushing for socialism, real material socialism, you're not on the left at this point in our society. Because what is a left but the people that push for continual progress forward? And where we're at, the only place to go is socialism.
Yeah, I like what you said about being yourself. I'm like I guess someone said Eddie should just read theory and just flex, or I've gotten a lot of comments like, you make socialism masculine, or you represent the opposite of what leftists think they are. I mean, that's good, and I'm glad people find some value in that, but that's just me being myself and not letting the fact that I don't mesh with a lot of people who were traditionally leftist when I started doing this stuff, not letting that get in the way of my beliefs and my learning and development, and then not letting like leftists bully me out of the being myself. Like there have been tons of people who have told me, I don't know, all sorts of things, all sorts of ridiculous things that I need to do to fit in on the left. Like I need to put my pronouns in my bio. And I'm like, that's not something I feel like I need to do, so I haven't done it, just be yourself, honestly. And as the left grows, as Marxism grows, it'll become more quote unquote normal. And, as we continue to study Marxism, we'll realize that class analysis is key, not these liberal identity politics, these identity issues like, abolish masculinity or whatever the hell these people talk about.
I like this comment here by the voice of the people. Nothing is less masculine than being a bootlicker for capitalists and the police state. Wonderfully said, comrade.
One of the things...
Hey, you're going to get the double bicep down for the audience that comes on. Boom.
Ooh.
Get the cannons out.
Been working on it. I'm almost fully transformed into one of the thumbs from Spy Kids. Sloop is a man, help us, save us.
One of the things my dad taught me about being a man is you don't, touch your toes for nobody, right? You stand up for yourself as who you are, no matter who that is, right? Whether you're an effeminate dude, a masculine dude, whatever, a woman, it doesn't matter, right? Being a man or being whatever is about standing up for yourself. And if you're telling people be okay with spending the majority of your life making somebody else rich, if you're okay with taking orders from people like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, whoever, then you're not fulfilling what it means to be a man. So that's part of masculinity for me. But that could easily be part of femininity for a woman or whoever. It don't matter, right? It's about being a full person and standing up for yourself.
For sure. That's where we look at a guy like Andrew Tate. I'm like, you're not really a tough guy.
No.
You're buying into the system. You're not fighting the real powers that be. You're not really fighting the ruling class. Just talking all this bullshit about the Matrix without fighting the Matrix. But anyways, we're probably going to wrap it up now. We had like 30 super chats today, which was so awesome. Thank you all so much. So glad that you had that many questions and that you wanted to support our project financially. Could not do it without all of you. Thank you to my brothers in arms here, Noah and Carlos, for joining me for this midday stream. Appreciate you all for being with us. Thank you to our moderators as well, Jacob, Cobra Commander, Ware Pilgrim, anyone else I missed. Appreciate you all. Keep reading, keep studying, keep learning. Yeah. Anything else that you guys want to say or plug before we call her a day?
Love you, brothers.
All right. See you later, everybody. Solidarity.